Rishi Sunak revealed how Britain can prosper with a no-deal Brexit in a throwback column. The EU and UK have embarked on an intensified final phase of Brexit talks today after Britain agreed to lift its block on negotiations. The breakthrough came after a call between the EU's chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier and his British counterpart David Frost, with both sides agreeing to restart talks. Negotiations had been deadlocked since last week because of Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to demand a fundamental rethink from the bloc before allowing further meetings. Mr. Barnier and Lord Frost agreed a 10-point plan for this next and final phase of the negotiations, including working through weekends and establishing a small joint secretariat to hold a master consolidated text. However, a Downing Street spokesperson said it is clear that significant gaps remain between our positions in the most difficult areas. Mr. Johnson had criticized a statement adopted by EU leaders at a summit last week that called on the UK to make the necessary moves to make an agreement possible, saying there was no point continuing talks if all concessions needed to come from the British side. As the clock ticks down, a 2016 column by Rishi Sunak has resurfaced, in which the Chancellor of the Exchequer revealed how Britain can prosper with a no-deal Brexit. Campaigning for Britain to leave the bloc before the EU referendum, Mr. Sunak wrote, "The EU has a dismal record on opening up new trade markets for its members. It took Brussels 58 years to sign a free trade agreement (FTA) with a top 10 economy, Canada, and even this was almost derailed by a tiny Belgian province." Mr. Sunak recalled how independent nations everywhere have a better record at managing trade policy. For example, Switzerland has signed FTAs with 8 of Britain's largest 10 trading partners while the EU has only managed to strike deals with 2. Canada has covered 90% of its exports with FTAs, considerably more than the EU achieved for Britain. South Korean companies enjoy tariff-free access through FTAs to markets worth $44 trillion, £33 trillion in GDP, 60% more than EU companies. The Conservative MP for Richmond added, "The EU clearly has the wrong set of trade priorities. Reversing these failures is one Brexit's biggest prizes." Outside the custom union, Britain can regain control over its trade policy and use it to turbocharge growth. The EU's protectionist trade policy slaps big tariffs on everyday products to prevent European producers from being undercut, resulting in higher prices for consumers. Outside the customs union, Britain can cut import tariffs on goods we don't produce at home and that are cheaper to import from outside the EU. Imported oranges, for example, are taxed at 16% to ensure Europeans buy Spanish rather than cheaper alternatives from Egypt. Bicycles meanwhile, which in Britain are largely imported from Asia, are taxed at 15% to protect Italian producers.